Can BitLocker be used in a dual boot system with Windows on one drive, Linux on another? My workplace allows for remote logins to the company network, with certain prerequisites for securing a computer before making the connection, one of which is that Windows must be used to make the connection, and that BitLocker must be used to secure the physical hard drive on which Windows is installed. I am not being asked to set up my home computer for this, but I thought it might be a good idea. I am planning to purchase a new computer which comes with Windows 7 pre-installed, to install Ubuntu Linux on a separate hard drive, and then to set that hard drive as the first to boot. That way Grub2 will allow booting into either operating system, and each operating system is independent of the other, each ignoring the other's hard drive. This is how my current computer is set up. My question is whether I can encrypt the Windows 7 hard drive with BitLocker in such a setup, without interfering with Linux or with Grub2, and if I can, how best to go about it.
If the new computer does not have a trusted platform module, it should work just fine without any special setup procedures. Get the new computer, get Linux installed and dual boot working, then enable BitLocker and encrypt the Windows drive. I've got a similar configuration that works just fine, but I have separate partitions for Windows and Linux on the same drive. It's still doable with a TPM, but it's not as straightforward.
Despite SpiderLuxEye's somewhat final comments tongue, I've just set up a dual boot system with Windows 10 using BitLocker, password encryption rather than TPM. The steps I followed were: remove BitLocker encryption via the BitLocker wizard. Resize this partition from a Ubuntu Live CD. Windows Disk Partition tool does support resizing, but was refusing to shrink my mostly empty 250 grams partition to much less than 170 grams. After this, the BitLocker wizard/GUI willfully claimed that it couldn't encrypt anything. I worked around this by using the bmanage.exe, this URL, from an administrative CMD shell.
This is how I installed and managed to set up a dual boot of Linux, Arch, and Windows 11. In Windows, backup BitLocker keys, important, you will need them later. Suspend BitLocker, it will stay off until next Windows boot. Reboot to BIOS, F whatever key need to do or use advanced reboot from Windows. In BIOS, turn off the secure boot, boot from USB that you are going to install Linux from. Linux, you should be able to boot now, from USB. Install your distro on a separate partition and create a separate boot partition for it. Once installation has finished, just reboot. Now you should see the grub menu and be able to boot Linux. If you want to boot Windows from it, you will need to provide BitLocker key. You also should be able to boot Windows from BIOS boot menu. You still might need the BitLocker key. That's it.
이번이 바로 미스스 코드.